Hello everyone. My name is Meher Graywall and I'm from Worth a Shot. Today, we're honored to partner with UW Medicine to bring you this town hall. This is our effort to address some of the most important current issues around the pandemic, the vaccines, and most importantly, the COVID-19 variants. With names like B117 and B1351, they pose a significant public health problem and are a cause of fear and confusion amongst the community. So today we hope to address all of these topics, get help and answers from our experts, and hopefully answer your questions and dispel fears in the community. It's an honor to have with us Dr. Reena Patel, infectious disease from UW Medicine, Dr. Deepthi Mani, internal medicine from Valley Hospital, and Dr. Anita Chopra. And can everyone hear me? It looks like I was muted for a second. And Dr. Anita Chopra, internal medicine from UW Medicine, and Miss Yvonne Simpson, the director of interpreter services, UW Medicine. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Now over to Harkirat to welcome our panel of experts.
Today we have with us Dr. Reena Patel. Dr. Patel is an assistant professor at the Division of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at UW Medicine. In addition to her infectious disease practice, Dr. Patel's focus of research is HIV care and treatment for adults, adolescents, and children in resource-limited settings. Dr. Patel, it's an honor to have you here today.
We also have Dr. Deepthi Mani. Dr. Mani is an associate professor of internal medicine at Valley Hospital and is co-chair of the American College of Physicians Internal Medicine Graduate Council. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Mani.
And lastly, we have Dr. Anita Chopra. Dr. Chopra is an internal medicine physician at UW Medicine Shoreline. She is part of the Healthcare Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee at UW Neighborhood Clinics. Dr. Chopra chairs the American College of Physicians Primary Care Council and co-chairs the American College of Physicians International Medical Graduate Council. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra.
Thank you, Ajuni. So just a little bit about the format of our town hall today. The format is interactive. We have collected questions from the community, things that people want to know or need clarity on. And you will also, we will be asking your questions from the experts today. And in addition, participants will have the opportunity to ask their questions as well. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them in the chat. So let's get started. Dr. Mani, as we stand today, almost 32% of Americans have had COVID. The vaccines are here, and hospital systems and public health are really trying to make them accessible. Can you please walk us through the COVID situation as it currently stands? Where are we at the moment?
Thank you, Meher. I'll be happy to walk through the COVID situation. I have prepared some slides on that, and let me share my screen with you. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just take a look at the global picture. These slides are from the Johns Hopkins coronavirus 19 dashboard. If you look at the world overall, we have over 125 million cases worldwide with about 2.8 million deaths. The highest number of cases and deaths have been noted in the United States, in Brazil, and in India, and the cases are continuing to rise in Europe as well. In the United States, the first case of COVID was noted in January in 2020. We are around 427 days or so into the pandemic. And so far, we have had over 30 million cases and close to 550,000 deaths in the US. The cases vary in the states, in the United States. And if you look at the trend, there are some states where the cases are still rising, and those states are seen in shades of red in this particular slide. So cases are rising in Michigan, in New York, in Pennsylvania. The slide actually shows a 7-day trend. If you look at the past 24-hour data, you can also see that the cases are rising in Florida, in Philadelphia as well. If you take a look at just the state of Washington, we have over 357,000 confirmed cases and around 5,200 deaths. We have, thankfully, vaccinated over 1 million people, and that is around 14.3% of our population. So that's where we stand.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Mani. This gives us great insight into where we are at the moment. So, Dr. Patel, about more than 500,000 people have died due to COVID in the United States, and cases are falling slowly across the United States. Is this because of the vaccines alone?
I think there are likely multiple factors playing a role here. So that include public health measures, including social distancing, mask wearing, hand washing, etc. And now most recently, we've added vaccines to our arsenal of toolkit to combat this pandemic. So we're likely seeing a mix of effects from these various different measures taking place right now. I personally am a little concerned about a fourth wave coming now in the United States. We're seeing cases rise in Europe, in India, and potential uptick in some places, like Dr. Mani said, in the United States. So I'm bracing myself for a potential fourth wave.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Patel. So, Dr. Chopra, finally, there's a ray of hope in the form of vaccines. The FDA has approved 3 vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the J&J, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the US. So, Dr. Chopra, is one vaccine better than the other? So what should people prefer?
Yes, let me walk you through this a little bit. I have a few slides with me about the vaccines, and let's see if we can, shed some light on that. And let me share my screen with you. All right, so the first thing that I would like to reiterate is that none of us will be safe until all of us are safe. And this is just underlining the importance of getting vaccinated. We are all in this together, and vaccination needs to succeed globally. And I really underline the word globally for everyone to be safe. The world is a much smaller place now. People travel from one coast to another, from one continent to another, and that's how infections spread. So we are all literally in this together. Vaccines provide active acquired immunity to any infectious disease. Vaccines are not new. mRNA vaccines are new. Vaccines contain those agents that are not actually the disease, but resemble the microorganism, and they help our body create antibodies, which are the body's own soldiers to fight disease. So in fact, what it does is it stimulates the body's immune system. And vaccines are the most effective way to prevent infectious diseases. And we have seen the success, of these vaccines in the eradication of smallpox and, restriction of diseases like polio, measles, and tetanus from much of the world. This slide just gives you a brief sort of glimpse into different types of vaccines, and the 2 main things that we really should know, which are relevant to the COVID-19 vaccine, are number 1, the mRNA vaccines, which uses a small piece of the RNA molecule to teach the immune system to target key viral proteins. And the other one is a viral vector, which is used in a J&J in the J&J vaccine, and we will see that more in the coming slides. At this time, FDA has granted or approved the Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J vaccines. Talking about Pfizer and Moderna, which were approved in December 2020, both of them are mRNA vaccines. They cannot give you a coronavirus infection. There is no active COVID virus in these vaccines. They are an mRNA particle enclosed in a lipid nanoparticle, and all that it is doing is teaching your body to make antibodies. The mRNA in no way enters the nucleus of the cell, so it cannot interact with your DNA. It does not in any way alter your DNA or your genetic material. So, people who are skeptical about getting the vaccine because they feel that it may interfere with their genetic makeup, it's not true at all. So the three vaccines are the Moderna, which is recommended for people above the age of 18. There are 2 shots, which are spaced 28 days apart. Moderna vaccine has been shown to be 94% efficacious at preventing COVID-19 infection and provides significant protection against serious illness and hospitalization. The Pfizer vaccine is recommended for people above the age of 16. It is 2 shots, 21 days apart, also an mRNA vaccine, and it is shown to be 95% efficacious. So this is just a comparison of the two, the Moderna and the Pfizer, showing how effective they are. Now, what about the J&J vaccine? It is 72% effective, and it is a viral vector vaccine, and I will explain that further. The good thing about it is only 1 shot, 1 and done. And this is recommended for people 18 years and older. The J&J vaccine is a viral vector vaccine, which means it uses a modified version of a different type of virus. It's not the COVID virus. It's a different type of virus, again, which cannot cause any infection, but it just serves as a vehicle to introduce important instructions to our cells. They will enter the cells of our body and start the process of making antibodies. 1 jab does the job. It does not require any special refrigeration, and it can be stored for up to 3 months in the normal refrigerators. It has shown to have high efficacy in preventing hospitalization and deaths, which is really, really important. And no one got COVID-19 at least 4 weeks after they receiving the J&J, or they did not have to get hospitalized. And the early evidence also suggests that J&J might provide protection against asymptomatic infections, transmissions as well. Which vaccine should I get? Should I prefer the Pfizer and Moderna, or should I get J&J? What should I do? So please be assured that every vaccine has gone through intensive authorization process. Trials have been done in thousands of patients, and the FDA has approved them after all those stages of trials. So please get the vaccine that is available to you once you are in the eligible group. Please remember that we all need to be protected, and vaccine is the way to get protected, and that is the only way that will bring things back to normal. So that's a little bit about the vaccines.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra. Dr. Mani, Dr. Chopra was talking a lot about the J&J vaccine. So Dr. Mani, there are a lot of mixed feelings in the community about the J&J vaccine. And many people are a bit hesitant to get it just because they think that it isn't as effective as the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines. They have heard the efficacy is low, that it is not as strong. So what would you say to that? And can you please walk us through the advantages and disadvantages of the J&J vaccine?
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. So it's very tempting to compare the clinical data from the phase 3 trials and look at the numbers and say, hey, 67% doesn't seem to be as good as the 94, 95% cited for the mRNA vaccines. But that comparison is flawed, and let me explain why. These trials have been done in different times and in different settings. So, for example, the Moderna trial was primarily done in US in 99 sites. The first person in the trial got the shot in around July 2020. The J&J vaccine trials were done a few months later, and it involved people in different countries, including US, Mexico, South Africa, from South American countries, including Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Colombia. Also, while the study was ongoing for the J&J vaccine, we had the variants going around in South Africa, as well as in Brazil, which was not the case when the Moderna or the Pfizer studies were being done. Also, we see when we look at the population involved in these trials, there were more Hispanic and Black population in the J&J vaccine trials. So it's not necessarily a head-to-head comparison between vaccines. And what we would focus when it comes to vaccine efficacy is how good are the vaccines in preventing deaths and serious illnesses that result in hospitalizations. So if you look at J&J vaccine, there were no deaths in the vaccine group compared to the placebo group. And after 4 weeks, there were no hospitalizations. The J&J vaccine is thought to be 85% or more efficacious in preventing severe or critical illness after 4 weeks. And that reflects a fine vaccine. As for the advantages, as Dr. Chopra had mentioned, this is a viral vector vaccine, and the genetic material that encodes for the spike protein here is the DNA, not the mRNA. And DNA is much less fragile than mRNA, so it does not need the stringent storage conditions that the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines require. You could store it at regular refrigeration temperatures, that is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius or 36 to 46 Fahrenheit for about 3 months. So it's a great benefit, especially in resource limited settings. It's also a great benefit in countries, especially in the developing world. And as Dr. Chopra had already mentioned, it's a single shot. So if you are someone who's not fond of needles, this is the vaccine that you should consider. If you're also coming from a particular circumstance when you can't make it to the second appointment, if you don't have a flexible job, or if you're homeless, or if you have substance use disorder, so for whatever reason you can't guarantee that you would be able to take the second shot, this is the vaccine to go. There is a committee called the ACIP, the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices, which guides CDC on vaccines for various preventable illnesses. And ACIP has not stated a preference for one particular vaccine. And currently, physicians recommend that people should take the first available vaccine made available to them, and that includes the J&J vaccine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mani. So, Dr. Patel, the year 2020 has got to be one of the worst years for public health. Now, on one hand, the vaccines have brought us a lot of optimism, and on the other hand, the COVID variants are taking the world by storm. So, Dr. Patel, it sometimes seems like a race, the vaccines versus variants. What are the variants? Please tell us about each of them. Are they mutants? And how dangerous are they?
Yeah, thank you. We're seeing some questions in the chat regarding this point about variants. I'm excited to talk about that. And my very first point that I want to convey to you all is mutations are natural. There are cells that are replicating in your body that are technically mutating. There are cells everywhere around us that every time they replicate, it's very natural in the replication process to make an error in copying. So, when cells replicate, they try to make an exact copy of itself. And every now and then errors are made. And that's very natural. It's a natural process. All organisms do this, whether it's human cells, virus cells, dog cells, etc. Some things that are unique to the SARS-CoV-2 or the coronavirus are some of these elements. It actually mutates much slower than most of the viruses that we know of. So it mutates, it has mutations, for many of these pathogens, we're able to determine what's called a mutation rate. And that mutation rate is actually 4 times slower for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, as compared to influenza. And I particularly work with patients living with HIV and study HIV. And there, the mutation may be tens to 100 times slower than how fast HIV mutates. And this is because this virus has something that's actually very smart that a lot of RNA viruses don't have. It has a proofreading function. So when it makes a copy of itself, it has this mechanism that follows all the DNA chains afterwards to check if the replication is correct or incorrect and fixes them, which many other viruses don't. And that may be why one of the reasons that's hypothesized why it mutates so slowly. So some of you may be asking, if the coronavirus replicates and mutates so slowly, then why do we have mutations that are important for us to think about? And I think this fundamentally gets to how pervasive this virus has become throughout all parts of the world. So it's just infecting far too many people that even the slower rate of mutation ends up being meaningful at a population level. And so I want to talk about, one person brought up the question, why have people not talking about mutations or variants back in March when the pandemic hit us in the US, and why only now? No, the honest truth is it's been mutating the whole time. There have been mutations seen. Some of it is lag in our monitoring. So we weren't doing as much molecular genetic monitoring earlier on, and it was only being done in specific laboratories. But now there's a centralized, at least in the US, a centralized effort at the federal level that conducts this molecular surveillance. So now we're able to understand it more systematically and thoroughly. And there were variants all along. We need numbers at a larger level to start understanding what are the implications. So the CDC just recently came up with 3 levels of classifying variants. The first one is variants of importance that they are monitoring closely. And they're, at this point, 10 to 50 of these variants that are listed there. The next higher level is variants of concern. And this has implications on the ability of the variant to change the dynamics of the infection or implications for the vaccine. And then the last category is variants of, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the term, but it has the third highest category where we are worried that our known treatment or prevention modalities will not work. So we have yet to get to that highest level. Here are, as of today, the 5 variants of concern that the CDC lists. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about these because I want you to feel empowered with this information. There's what people call the UK variant, B117, and these are based on genetic nomenclature that's agreed upon internationally. As a side point, like everything with COVID, even the genetics research community had to come together to reach a consensus on how to do this, and it's sort of a new for that community as well. But that's a nomenclature that's being used right now. So what we know from studies that came out from the UK is that this variant is likely more transmissible, about 50% more transmissible, and that it tends to cause severe infection, about 60% more fatal. In terms of vaccine implications, it's actually, in my opinion, not too worrisome. So the same data from the same countries, the UK and in Scotland, suggests that the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines, which are the ones that were initially approved and most commonly used in the UK, are still effective. And what matters most to us is preventing hospitalizations. So they're seeing just as good rates with the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccine as we're seeing with the initial efficacy trials. So that's the most reassuring thing about this. The next thing is the South Africa variant, or the B1.351. This one appears similarly, some data to suggest it's more transmissible. We don't yet have data to comment on severity. And what we can say is that the vaccines that were used in South Africa at the time when this variant became prevalent are these three, which includes the Janssen or the one that my colleagues have called the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They show lower efficacy than we've seen with the mRNA vaccines, but that the protection against severe COVID, so again, hospitalization or needing ICU care, et cetera, that is just as good. So again, it hits the mark on where we need it the most. And for and Pfizer and Moderna have conducted studies where they took blood samples from those who had been vaccinated in their efficacy trials and put the variant in the blood samples and saw if the blood samples were if the blood was still able to make antibody titers. So they did get lower antibody titers, but it looked like the whatever antibodies you had sufficiently neutralized the virus and made it possible to not actually go on to the next step of infecting the person. So again, this is in a lab setting. We don't have that real world data yet, but my message to you again is I suspect it won't make a big difference on a population level. But of course, I stand to be corrected, as I have been for so many things related to COVID. The other two variants were first detected in California. There's some concern that they may be slightly more transmissible. We don't have data on severity yet. And again, the few lab-based studies suggest that neutralization may be reduced mildly to moderately. But the thing that matters more is its effect to neutralize the virus, which we don't yet have data on. And then the last variant is the one detected simultaneously in Japan and Brazil, called P1. And what I want to show you here, you may have heard recently news coverage that so this in the light beige or yellow is the UK variant, that's starting to take up around 20 to 30% of the circulating variants in our country now. The other variants that I've covered are a really tiny line here, that's the South Africa variant. And then the next two light and dark orange are the California variants. So there is clearly some shift in the epidemiology of the virus, but ultimately my fundamental message to everyone is the sooner we can get more people vaccinated, fundamentally, we're just going to bring down the number of people who are infected and therefore the number of virus and variants that are circulating in our communities and be able to finally tackle this, get our best shot at tackling this pandemic. So central message, the same as what Dr. Chopra said, we are not protected until all of us are protected. And so everyone needs to do their part in getting vaccinated. And I know so many of you have raised individual health concerns. We're happy to talk through those as well and help think through, what is obviously best for the community and the population can also be the best choice for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. So, Dr. Patel, what do these variants mean for vaccine development? I know we talked a little bit about whether the current vaccines are effective against these variants, but do you think that the vaccines will need to be redeveloped?
That's a great question. I see one or two questions along those lines in the chat box. So the answer is a little complicated depending on the vaccine. So one person asked, why not just make vaccines now that accommodate these new variants? And the answer is, unfortunately, the manufacturing and production of vaccines takes a long time. And I want to remind everyone that we have been on astronomical fast speed for COVID vaccine. Never in history have we gone from a pathogen to a vaccine being available in 9 to 10 months. That has never happened in history. So everyone is working at neck-breaking pace to meet the public health demands that we need right now. But the way the technology works, at least for the mRNA vaccine, that's the beauty of it, because it's in some ways the signal in the vaccine is programmed in a computer using the genetic code. It's a lot easier to change it and then put it in a new vaccine. That's why actually Moderna has said that they're actually ready to tackle the UK variant in a quote unquote booster vaccine. So the challenge is not so much for mRNA vaccines in manufacturing and getting those vaccines ready, which is different than some of the other ways our COVID vaccines are made. But the challenge is now going to be, when do we use them? How do we use them? Are they going to be a one-time booster, et cetera? These are questions that you all might be thinking about, that the honest truth is we don't know answers yet too. There are a lot of important and brilliant people thinking about this right now.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. Another question for you, actually, Dr. Patel. So how often can this virus mutate? What should we expect in the future?
It's mutating all the time. Just like I said, every other cells are in a body. So I don't want to scare you. Instead, I want you to feel calm that cells mutate. It's part of nature. It's part of evolution. The question is, when will a mutation occur in the virus that ends up being advantageous to the virus and detrimental to us? That we don't know. If someone figures that out, they're going to win the $1 million prize here. But we don't know that. And it's hard to anticipate that. So again, my central message is we have a window of opportunity here to, the key thing, as I said, is this virus mutates relatively slowly, but we have a variance issue because so many people are infected with the virus. And so if we can cut these infections down even by half, and the only quick solution we have right now for that is vaccines. And so if the more people can get vaccinated, the sooner, the better it is. And call me a little renegade for saying, I, despite being a public health practitioner, advise you, regardless of your age, regardless of your comorbidities, go get vaccinated if you can. Of course, there are ethical concerns. We don't want other people who are more at risk for COVID to not get the vaccine, but assuming those individuals are able to get vaccines, I hear people talk about like middle of the day, weekday vaccine slots are going unfilled in our area, in Seattle area. Take up those slots and go get vaccinated now. The urgency is to get vaccinated as many people as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. That's an amazing message for the community. So, Dr. Mani, I know there's been a lot of questions about this in the chat from the community, but when will the vaccine immunity wear off, and how often will a person need to get revaccinated in the future?
Meher, I wish I could tell you a firm answer on this topic, but there's a lot of uncertainty regarding this topic. We do know that the immunity is going to last for months, possibly years, but we really don't know what the exact duration is. Once we see a host of infections crop up in patients who are already vaccinated, then we know, well, this is actually going to be the duration of immunity. But we haven't seen that. It's very likely that we might need to get booster shots. We don't know whether the booster shots are going to be yearly, like we do in influenza vaccines. We don't know whether it'll be several years later. Um, Time will tell.
Thank you, Dr. Mani. So another question for Dr. Patel. What do the variants mean for the elderly and for kids?
The honest truth is, Mayor, we don't have enough data to specify at that level. So I can't tell you if the younger individuals in our communities or the older individuals are more at risk for the variants. We don't have that level of data yet to comment.
Dr. Patel, there's been a lot of talk that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is more effective against the variants. Is that true?
I think Dipti covered this really well. So it's definitely not the case that the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines can be considered more effective against these variants. The point is, as Dipti mentioned, they were tested at a different time and a different place when these variants, as far as we know, were not present. And that's likely why they appear to have higher efficacy signals than the Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, which we didn't talk about, but is probably the next vaccine to get approved, in line to get approved in the US. So that one, as well as the Novavax, these were all done at a different time point, different places. They had more international sites included that likely had these variants circulating at the time of the trial.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. So Dr. Chopra, please tell us about the vaccine trials in kids. I know that that's something that a lot of kids and families have really been looking forward to and waiting for more information about.
Yes, as a matter of fact, there are trials that are going on in kids, and Moderna has announced that they have an mRNA 1273, that's the technical name for it, trial going on in pediatric patients. It's been initiated in the United States and Canada. It's in phase 2 out of 3. It's called KidCove study, and it is evaluating the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine in kids, in healthy kids between 6 months and 12 years of age. So there are the two-part trial, which includes part 1, which is an open label dose finding portion, which are the technical names, and a randomized placebo-controlled part 2 trial. And it is being conducted in collaboration with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease and the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. So we hope that by fall, we will have some results to look forward to.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. Dr. Mani, with the variants here, can schools safely reopen?
So this is a scenario where we would weigh in the risks and benefits. Schools and school-related programs are important for the development of and well-being of children and adolescents. In addition to just academic instruction, you gain social and emotional skills from the school setting. Many families, especially from the disadvantaged setting, especially racial and ethnic minorities, utilize several school-related services, including nutritional programs, counseling services, therapy services, and mental health services, and a host of other services. And they rely on school as a safe and supervised setting for their kids during the daytime, especially when they have less flexible jobs. We also know that the COVID pandemic hits the racial and ethnic minorities and the disadvantaged populations more. Given the risks and benefits, the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, still strongly feels that students should be present in school for their own well-being. And to have students be in school physically, especially when we have this host of variants, we have to implement prevention strategies with absolute vigor. And this involves, the basic strategies, including masking, physical distancing, cough etiquette, and to provide that safely in a school setting, we of course need increased funding. We also need to ensure that the staff in school, teachers and other ancillary staff are vaccinated. As far as the funding is concerned, it was announced yesterday by the Biden administration that about $81 billion from the American Rescue Plan is going to be allocated just towards safe opening of schools. And that is a very optimistic sign. But yeah, overall, I do believe that we can still work on reopening the schools, provided we continue to focus on the prevention strategies, including vaccination and the masking and respiratory etiquette.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mani. So one message for the community is that we are all in this together. None of us will be safe until all of us are safe, like Dr. Chopra said. This is probably the slogan for building herd immunity and promoting vaccine optimism. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Mani. Now we will take some live questions from the audience. So I see that we've had a lot of great questions from people in the audience. So let me go to the questions that people have. So we have a question from MD, and I'm just going to read the questions out loud. So hi, I am 63 and I have ITP low platelets. Also, I tend to have reactions to medications and an esophageal disorder that sometimes also impacts my breathing. I'm super scared after looking at various reports of adverse reactions to COVID vaccines that include people going unconscious, having platelet levels suddenly drop. I've read that over 900 people have died from the vaccines. Can you please help me determine whether the vaccine is going to be more dangerous to take than to avoid?
I'm happy to tackle some of that. In fact, if I can share my screen, this is, as of right now, live, the VAERS reporting vaccine information on the CDC website. And so to date, there have been 126 million doses of COVID vaccines administered in the US, actually, as of a few days ago. There have been reports. So this is a reporting system. It's an active reporting system. So you know always when you pick up signals here, they're going to be what we call over-reported. Even then, there were over 2,000 reports of deaths that account for 0.0018% of the people who received the COVID vaccine. So I think we have to be very careful with how we process language. These are deaths that are reported after a COVID vaccine. They're not deaths. And so CDC has a very rigorous process because, as you can imagine, they want to make sure they get this right. A very rigorous process where they adjudicate, meaning they check through all the medical records they can get hold of, the autopsy reports, the death certificates. They try to figure out, is there any potential association or linkage between the vaccine and these deaths? And to date, 0 of those linkages have been established. I understand it's scary though. There are, all of us are facing many unknowns, but I want to again stress the message that I've put in the chat box, that the real risks of COVID infection or severe COVID, needing to be in the hospital and dying from COVID, these are real threats. Those numbers are much higher than any potential or hypothetical concerns from the vaccines. And so when you think about the risk-benefit ratio, as we often do in health and medicine, to me, from the vast, vast majority of individuals, I can't think of I can't think of any single individual situation where I would not recommend the vaccine. And so the person, for example, says they have ITP or low platelet disorder. That's not a contraindication to getting the vaccine. You should go ahead and get the vaccine and be vigilant. about the symptoms of low platelets. Let your provider know that you have this and you want to be monitored. It's reasonable to say, can I please get my platelets checked in a week's time, 2 weeks, so forth. These are things we all don't know the answers to. And, you know, all of us as providers are very sympathetic to those concerns, and we'll work with you. We'll work with you to get where you want to go. But please try your best to inform yourself of the real data. Try to fight language that says the vaccine caused this. There's no way to know that. That's the real truth. And so think carefully about how you think about it and how you say it to other people, and make sure to really try to convey true information.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and sometimes it might seem scary to just know what's true or what's not. And like Dr. Patel said, the CDC can be a great source for clarifying up some of those concerns. So now I would like to hand it over to Harkirat for the next question.
So another question that we had in the chat was, how long does the immunity from these vaccinations last? We do understand that after you get the vaccinations, it takes a couple weeks for the immunity to build up, but how long would that immunity last? Would it be a couple years, and then would we have to get like booster shots, such as for the flu that we might have to get, or other like MMR vaccines? How would those be? If the doctors could please answer this.
I think Dr. Mani really addressed that question, and we don't know for sure. It could be anywhere between few months to 2 years. We know that we will probably need booster shots, but when will it be? Will it be after a year or 2 years? We don't know yet. So hopefully in the coming few months, we will know a little bit more about booster shots and how and when we will be needing those.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. So another question that came up was from Ajay and Dia. So as of now, 16 plus years old are eligible to get vaccines. Are there any upcoming vaccine plans for smaller kids, 1 to 3 years?
I will take that one. And as we, talked about the Moderna trials before, the trials, in the trials, they've recruited kids from 6 months to 12 years of age. So by the fall, we should know how successful those trials are and whether the younger kids, like 3 or 4 year olds, will be eligible for the vaccine. But still the trials are going on and we don't have data yet.
Okay, now sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can reassure individuals, with more than a year of this pandemic now, we do appreciate that children are at less risk for developing severe forms of the infection, unlike adults, certainly unlike older individuals. Clearly, there's a trend there. The older you are, the more you are at risk. Racial ethnic minorities are at greater risk. People with chronic conditions, obesity, et cetera, at higher risk, so forth. But children, fortunately, appear to be at lesser risk, and contrary to one of my early hypotheses, aren't playing a major role in transmissions. And so that's why now I have become a major proponent of schools returning to in-person classes, because of all the data we have that refutes those concerns. That being said, we still want to be careful with our children, but I think there's what I'm looking for in moments like these is a little room to breathe easier, is for a little bit of hope. And I walk away with a little bit of hope, knowing that our children are generally not as severely affected by the infection.
Thank you, Dr. Patel and Dr. Chopra. So now I'll hand it over to Harkirat again.
Another question that we had in the chat, this was from Dr. Brownstein, and she's mentioned that there is a concern among some about getting the vaccine, especially in cancer patients. This is a fear that the treatment in the cases, has severely compromised immune systems, and they fear that the vaccine will adversely affect them. What do the doctors feel about this question?
I'll try to address this one, and Rena and Anita, feel free to add anything more. So currently, the vaccines that we have available, they are not contraindicated in cancer patients. In fact, some of the trials did include patients who were immunosuppressed and had malignancies. We don't know how whether the immunity that these patients develop would be as robust as it would be in other age groups and other patients with less comorbidities. But we strongly recommend that they do get the vaccine, and it's very unlikely that they would have any adverse reaction from the vaccine just because of their cancer. I mean, we do have adverse reactions that are common from the vaccine, including local reactions and fatigue and a variety of other systemic effects, but it's very unlikely that they will have anything to particularly worry about just because of the malignancy. And I would also encourage each person to check with their oncologist for any particular recommendations. But in general, there is no contraindication in terms of getting the vaccine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mani. So we've also gathered some questions from the community. And again, I will hand it over to Ajuni now.
Thank you. So this question is for Dr. Patel. So this question is, can you please clarify the new CDC guidelines? Can I meet my family indoors unmasked after my vaccination?
Yeah, I think many of us were a little surprised when the CDC came up with this guidance. But like I said, you know, we're all trying to infuse a little bit of hope. So I welcome what the CDC said. So what the CDC says, as far as I understand, and others should feel free to please correct me. One is if you're meeting indoors, you can meet indoors with obviously with individuals who've been vaccinated in your household, but also other individuals who've been vaccinated. So that's now outside of your household, which is really refreshing. Spring is right around the corner, I guess is here, so we can start meeting outdoors, but it allows people who are vaccinated to start meeting indoors. And then it's made, the second point that the CDC guidance has made is it now allows you to meet someone else indoors who is not part of your household and who may not necessarily have been vaccinated, assuming that individual is not part of a household that is then at high risk for an infection. So someone, you know, who's older or who may have comorbidities, et cetera, those, for those individuals, it would not be a good idea and not recommended. But for other individuals, it would be okay to start meeting. Basically, what it's trying to do is allowing us to get back to our, you know, all the things that we love and cherish, which are human interactions, being with each other, enjoying each other, including indoors. And so that's, and maybe some of the secret agenda is to motivate people to get vaccinated. If you get vaccinated, you can do this now. So I think that's some of the thinking behind the CDC guidance. Please, others should please correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patel.
So now I'm off to Shravya for some more questions from the community.
Okay, thank you. So the next question we have is for Dr. Mani. So the question is, can I travel after I have had both shots, and what precautions do I take?
Excellent question. So it kind of depends. If it is a travel that you could avoid, I'd preferably stay home. If you are vaccinated, and if you are likely to meet people who are unvaccinated and who are at risk for developing serious complications from COVID, you would definitely need to be following all precautions. And while you're traveling, there is no way for you to know who these people are. So it's better that you actually mask when you travel. Though we are able to cut down infections, including asymptomatic infections considerably, it's not 100%. So in the event that you are you are having an asymptomatic infection, we don't want it to be passed on to a vulnerable person, especially during travel. So I would continue to maintain the routine precautions that we recommend currently. And Anita and Arena, feel free to add more.
Yeah, I think we cannot undermine the importance of the non-pharmaceutical interventions, and I think that we continue to mask and as we head towards normalcy, we continue to mask and maintain social distancing and safe travel until we reach the end of this pandemic.
Thank you to Dr. Chopra and Dr. Mani. So now over to Harkirat.
So additionally, we know that many participants probably have questions on how to get vaccinated, how they can organize their appointments, how to do that. So I would like to share some slides about what resources we have collected that you can go to arrange your vaccine appointments. All right. So you can see that you can make a vaccine appointment at the Washington FaceFinder website and see if you're eligible. And these are the website links right here. And then on this slide as well. One minute. And then these are also FaceFinders. This is a DOH.Washington website, vaccinefinder.org. And then Virginia Mason as well is conducting vaccines right now. So you can also go to their website and be able to schedule an appointment. And then Franciscan hospitals as well in South King County are also allowing appointments. And as well, if you have a MyChart and you are a multi-care patient, you can also schedule vaccine appointments. I will also send all these links in the chat so you can view the links and make your appointments.
Thank you so much, Harkirat. That was great information for the community. Thank you so much for putting those links in the chat. So again, feel free to take a look at these links and make sure to check out the FaceFinder so that you can check if you are eligible or if you do qualify for getting the vaccine. So are there any other questions from the audience? If you would like to type in the chat or if you would like to unmute, feel free to do that. It looks like we have.
So I think.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dr. Chopra.
I think we addressed most of the stuff. I think we can wrap up now.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Patel. Go ahead.
No, it looks like just one more question, and I'm also happy to stay on a little longer. My personal belief is one more person that I can convince to get vaccinated is a win for the day for me. So please, if there's anyone who's still skeptical, wants to engage in a conversation, please let me know how we can help you. The question is about which vaccine shows the best response to the current variants. And the honest answer, MD, is we don't know for sure. But the way I showed you that the data is very promising in England, UK, where the UK variant has been circulating for a long time. And from what we think we understand about the way the lab testing is being done, that the Moderna vaccine is also very effective. The Pfizer is the one, Pfizer and AstraZeneca are the ones in the UK being used in the UK. So my message to you is don't worry about that right now. I think people are definitely rightfully concerned about variants, but we are not going to know many of these answers for a long time from now. And the thing to do right now is to go ahead and get vaccinated and help each other. And like Anita said, you know, this is not only our local community, not only our community as the US, but it's our community as global citizens. We all need to do this. And we all need to advocate for other low middle income countries to get their vaccines as quickly as possible. And we as US need to stop hoarding vaccines and start donating more like other countries like India has been doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. So it looks like we have a couple more questions from the audience. So This is a question for Dr. Chopra. I got my first shot, which was Pfizer. How long can I delay getting the second shot?
So ideally, if you've had J&J vaccine, you don't need a second shot. If you've had the Pfizer vaccine, the second one is you should get it in after 21 days. However, in some cases, people have not been able to get the second one due to lack of access or shortage of vaccines up to 6 weeks, which is okay. The Moderna is the second dose is indicated after 28 days. But the same thing applies to Moderna as well. So I think up to 6 to 8 weeks, people have had to, wait that long. But now with more vaccine available, I think that, most people are getting the vaccine at the stipulated time. So, but 6 weeks or so is okay. And Reena, please weigh in if you like to this question.
Yeah, my message when it comes to this question is the honest truth is that for most vaccines, the longer you wait, the better the immunity is. So I hope I don't, again, break the rules that are out there. I'm not trying to break rules, but I'm trying to tell you it's okay. If you missed that appointment 3 or 4 weeks later, get it at 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 months later. Just get the repeat vaccine when you can. And chances are you'll actually have a better response. You may feel worse, but that's actually a good sign that your body's making the right response to the vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra and Dr. Patel. So the next question is for Dr. Mani. Dr. Mani, am I able to mix and match vaccines? Like if I get Pfizer as my first shot, can I get Moderna for the second dose?
So to be honest, I don't think we have any data to support this. And currently we do not encourage mixing and matching. J&J is just one shot. And usually you are able to make a repeat appointment once you get either of the Moderna or Pfizer shots. And if you're not able to get a repeat appointment, it's okay to wait it out till you get the same shot for the second dose as well.
Another question that we have from the community is for Dr. Chopra. I got my first dose vaccine a week ago. I had soreness of my arm and felt a tingling sensation. It went away, but I'm still worried. Can I still get the second dose?
So it is very common to have some local site reactions. I call them reactions very loosely, but some local site sensations like pain, discomfort, soreness, and sometimes even mild tingling sensation as the injection, the needle site goes in. It can sometimes irritate some nerves in the path, which can cause some tingling sensation. As long as it's resolves, it's gone away, you are okay to take the second shot. And you may not even have anything the second time over.
The next question we have from the community is for Dr. Patel. Can I get any other vaccines at the same time as the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, at the moment, we discourage that. In fact, we discourage you from getting another vaccine 2 weeks before you get your COVID vaccine. And this is really to make sure that we're not, if a reaction develops, we want to be able to track it well. We also want the immune response to be as robust as possible. So the current recommendation is to not get your COVID vaccine 2 weeks after you've gotten any other vaccine. Fortunately, the flu season is behind us, if we even had a flu season this year. So you don't have to worry about the flu vaccine. So maybe just the other routine vaccines that you would be eligible to get that I personally highly recommend you delay until you get your COVID vaccine, until after you get your COVID vaccine.
It looks like we have a couple more questions from the audience. So this is a question for Dr. Patel. Can I pre-medicate with Tylenol or ibuprofen to avoid side effects from the vaccine?
My personal answer is yes, indeed. And that's what I have done. That's what we generally tend to do for our children when they get their vaccines. We do pre-medicate with Tylenol or ibuprofen. I have seen Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the CDC director, give a message in January, I believe, that said she discourages against pre-medicating because the concern is potentially it would mitigate any immune response that the vaccine may be generating. I think that's entirely hypothetical, and there's no data to suggest otherwise. In routine practice, often we recommend individuals pre-medicate for other vaccines. So personally, I think it's completely fine. I will just share that when I got my second vaccine, afterwards, the next day I had like shaking chills and a low-grade fever, and that's very uncomfortable. and I didn't want to feel that way. So I certainly took ibuprofen even after I got the vaccine. So my personal suggestion is you should feel free to.
Thank you. So our last question, it looks like from the community, is for Dr. Chopra. Is it better to get immunity from COVID or to get the vaccine?
It is definitely better to get the immunity from the vaccine. The COVID infection is like a roll of dice. So we don't know where will we end up. Will we end up with a minor infection, or will it lead us to the ICU? But the COVID vaccine is definitely the better option. It may give us some mild side effects afterwards, like some minor chills, some body aches, but it will definitely prevent us from the more serious COVID infection and certainly from hospitalization. That is what trials have shown. So it's definitely better to get the vaccine. And as soon as you can, if you are eligible, please go ahead, make your appointment and get the vaccine. The more number of people who get it, the faster we will return back to normal.
So it looks like we have a couple more questions that just came up in the chat. So our first question in the chat that just came up is, I read on the Migraine Foundation website that migraine medication should not be taken 24 hours before or after the COVID shot. Otherwise, the COVID immunity response will be diminished. Is this true?
So I will take that. I am not aware of this. And by the migraine medication that they are talking about is probably NSAIDs, the ibuprofen, or Tylenol, which are the most common pain medications that we take. As far as the CDC guidelines go, it is certainly okay to take PRN medication after your shot when you do get the side effects, which is after the second vaccine dose. So I think I will have to read up on it. I have not come across this before, but the medications that they are referring to are the NSAIDs, which Dr. Patel talked about as well. And I think after your shot, it is okay to take the medication.
So we have a couple more questions. The first one is, can you travel overseas after you receive the first dose?
I think it's very important to know that the immunity is only partial after the first dose. So if we are trying to, make sure that we are safe in terms of the immunity, I think we don't have complete immunity. However, if you do need to travel, then please do so taking all safety precautions, mask up, and know that the first dose of the vaccine is not an immune passport. So you are not totally immune. But if you have to travel, you have to really do so safely.
So it looks like the last question we have in the chat here is, what is the minimum and maximum period difference between the first dose and the second dose?
So the honest truth is, I hate to be the one breaking the rules, but the answer is, we don't really know. We know what the trials did, and that's what the FDA emergency use authorization approval is based on. So the Pfizer trial chose to space out the two vaccines 3 weeks apart. Moderna chose to do it 4 weeks apart. And so that's what the FDA approvals are, and that's what administratively we all are trying to do when we administer vaccines, is stick to the 3 and 4 week points. Each one has a window around it. So the 3-week has about, I think, 3 or 4 days around it. The 4-week one also has a week window around it. But the honest truth is, don't worry about the details. Just go get vaccinated, get that first vaccine, and some point, approximately in the two months afterwards, get your second dose. Don't worry about the details. And again, this is a secret amongst those of us, amongst infectious diseases vaccine researchers, that I don't want it to be a secret. The honest truth is, for most vaccines, the longer you wait, the better you have immunity from the second dose. So big picture, don't worry about the timing. Go get vaccinated.
So we have a question from Ingrid. Can you mention sometimes swelling lymph node, especially important for mammograms?
So I believe that Ingrid, what you are asking is that the lymph nodes, local lymph nodes, may swell up after vaccine, and what it means for patients who are getting mammograms. I would suggest that if the mammogram is like an elective mammogram, just wait a few weeks for the lymph nodes to go down. And if they are not going down, please do go in and see your primary care doctor before you go in for the mammogram, because it could make a difference on what kind of imaging study they order. But if you have noticed swollen lymph nodes after your vaccine, please give it a few weeks to see if they go down on their own.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. And it looks like that was all the questions from the community. So thank you very much, Dr. Patel, Dr. Mani, and Dr. Chopra, and Ms. Simpson for this amazing session. It was an honor to be part of this town hall, and I hope that we have been able to answer some of the questions that you've been wondering about, and the most pressing questions from the community. And please don't hesitate to visit the UW Medicine website for COVID-19 related questions. They have a ton of resources there. And you're also welcome to check out our Twitter page at WorthAShot7 for the latest information about the vaccine, as well as where to get the vaccines. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Patel, and thank you, Yvonne, for this amazing session. Yvonne, your support is invaluable, and we could not have done this without you. And Reina, thank you very, very much. I know how busy you are, and you still took out time to do this session, and you stayed longer. You're very gracious, very kind. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me and giving this opportunity to connect with all of you. I put my email address in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fantastic